Hi, I'm Kevin Jeter along with Chris Jerry and Vincent Charles, and welcome to this week's edition of the Nation's Capital Sports Show here on AIM on Comcast 69 and Files 38. Gentlemen, let's get started talking about what we enjoy talking about the best and the most, and that is sports. Started with those Washington Redskins winning it just barely against those Tennessee Titans in their first game, 22-21. Chris.
Yeah, it was good to see football get started off. I'm glad the Redskins decided to go for the two-point conversion so we don't need any overtimes. But it was a good start. I thought it was a good showing by Kirk Cousins. I think that's really what you want to do is play these games and not have any major injuries to players.
Well, the good thing about this, Vincent, here's a question for you. Name something in which all Redskins quarterbacks in this game, Kirk Cousins, Rex Grossman, and Pat White, had in common.
Good question.
They all scored a touchdown. All right. Continue on, sir.
I was interested in the rookie play.
Did you watch that game, though?
Yes, I did.
I had to pick with him. You didn't know they all scored a touchdown. I'm messing with you, man. Continue.
But as far as the rookies playing, I'm really interested in seeing how the defensive backs are doing this year. So far, so good, except for some of the tackling. But I think that's just something these young guys have to learn. Pass defense seemed to be okay, but the run, the Redskins were kind of weak, especially in the first half. They gave up 103 yards on the run. In fact, Johnson had a good first half for Tennessee.
Well, here's the good thing about this, though. It's only the preseason game. So this is where you look at your rookies. You don't necessarily concentrate on your veterans, but you kind of expect that there's going to be some looseness there, and everyone's not going to be on cue.
Yeah, that run by Chris Johnson, that ate up a big chunk of yardage right there. But, you know, I thought the defense, all in all, for the first game played well. And, again, you know, with your first stringers, generally they're playing a quarter, maybe a quarter and a half. So, you know, again, the key thing is not to have any injuries. That's the big thing you worry about all the time in preseason, that one of your main players goes down in one of these meaningless games.
Now, we talk about penalties. They did have 11 penalties for 89 yards, so we're going to point that out. Vincent made that fact there. Offensively, Aldrick Robinson, Roy Halou, Fred Davis, Evan Royster, and Logan Paulson did well.
Halou turned in a good performance on the ground. I was surprised. And that's going to put pressure on Royster because they've got a lot of guys in that running back position, so somebody's going to be the odd man out. And as far as defense, Orakpo, he did make a difference. He put a lot of pressure on the quarterback for the little bit of time that he played.
That's right. Well, he did have that one play where it was a miscue. He was called offside, something to that effect. And so, but basically, he did perform as well as he could. Bright spots, Sky Dawson looking to make the team. Young man, a wide receiver. He had that impressive punt return in the second half of the game.
Yeah, it was a nice punt return. You know, when I look at, though, you know, go back to what I said at the beginning, the thing I thought was most impressive for the Redskins is that if they had any worry, Kirk Cousins, they know that they got a backup quarterback that they can count on when the regular season begins.
That's right. He did look smooth this time around as opposed to last year when he did come in. And that's it comes from playing with the offensive first unit, and those guys know him, they trust him. And so when Super Bob comes back, Robert Griffin III, and I got to ask you, why do you refer to Robert Griffin III as Super Bob, Chris?
I'm going to take no credit from that. That's something I heard local sports writer Tom Lavero say, and it fit him because he wants to do it all. You can't keep him down, and he just seems to want to go 100% all the time. And hopefully it doesn't mean that he'll go so much 100% that he'll hurt himself before he comes back for the regular season.
Well, there are 3 games left in the preseason, and we're talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday, August the 19th, and of course the Bills on August 24th, and they close out the season with Tampa Bay on August the 29th. For that third game, we're perhaps expecting Robert Griffin III, Super Bob, to start.
Yes, I do. I expect him to get some time in that third game because if he's going to be ready for Philadelphia, he has to take some snaps under game conditions.
Absolutely, because you know you're not going to have game conditions when you're wearing a red jersey, which means people don't hit you. So every NFL team, the third preseason game is the most important because that's the game that the starters tend to play the most in.
All right, we want to end this with this question. Do you think that Coach Mike Shanahan is doing well by handling this situation in terms of Robert Griffin III?
I think so far, as long as he doesn't let Griffin talk him into doing something he doesn't want to do, but I think he needs to play a couple snaps in the preseason.
Vincent, last word on this? Yes or
I
no?
think so far Shanahan is handling it well.
So that's a yes. All right, let's move on to the next. I didn't mean to cut you off, my long-winded friends. DC United, well, you know, they've had a dismal season, but the one thing that you got to love about MLS is that they always have these side events going on in terms of soccer, and so far DC United is looking good on that front. Now their dismal record is 3-15-4, and the MLS, that's really looking bad. But as far as the U.S. Open Cup, they're going to be playing in that final come October the 1st, Chris.
Yeah, they'll be playing in October against Real Salt Lake. They'll be playing out there in Salt Lake. So it's something to look forward to. The U.S. Open Cup is a tournament that they have. What it is, an open cup. It features teams that are amateur, some from the smaller minor leagues, and they all get together in this one and out, you know, win and done tournament. And despite their very, very poor MLS season, DC United has once again gotten to a U.S. Open Cup final. So let's hope that they can win that to salvage the season, because it's been a horrible regular season in MLS.
Vincent.
And since it isn't until October, they may be able to put it together. Maybe Ben Olsen can reshuffle the deck a little bit, and they can do well in this tournament.
Vincent, my man, are you talking about reshuffling the deck for the season or just for the U.S. Cup?
It's too late for the season. They
Right,
don't even have an away win.
There you go. So let's continue talking about what ails or what has ailed DC United. Where do we begin? Question for you, Chris. I know that we all feel very, you know, we have a very pride and joy about the head coach, Ben Olsen. Second year of the head coach. Is he the right guy for the job? Should we give him some of the blame, because we know a lot of things are not, you know, in his control?
Well, you know, because I like Ben going back to when he came here in 1997. But I'm going to give Ben a break, because the thing that doesn't get talked about enough is, despite all these coaching changes DC United's had, they've had the same general manager who's bringing these players in. Now, at the end of the day, the guy that's bringing the players in has to take some blame. Now, the one thing that they're doing, I think they know they're not going to make the playoffs the rest of the season, is they're playing a young team. In fact, the Elias Sports Bureau just said the other night that they played their youngest ever team, averaging about 21 years of age. So I think that's where they're going to go the rest of the season, try to play these young players, and you know, look forward to October when they have a chance for some silverware at the U.S. Open Cup.
Well, that's nice that they have that youth movement going on there. Vincent, same question. Do you put some of the blame for a dismal season on Coach Ben Olsen?
Of course, you have to put some of the blame on the head coach. But I agree with Chris. They are young. They've had a lot of injuries also. So I would say give Ben Olsen at least another year for the sake of stability.
All right. One of the things that I think that he has to deal with, and there's been a couple of miscues that he's had with players who have spoke their mind and it got out into the press, and he's been ebullient about handling that behind closed doors, but he needs to do a better job at that, and players need to realize that these are these very same players that used to be on the team or that played with them. I'm quite sure they probably established some type of friendship, but now he's the man in charge, and they need to respect that.
Well, you know, Ben being a former player himself, you know, he understands one thing that players don't like, and even as a fan, I don't like it. I don't need my coach outing my players in the press, talking about what they should and shouldn't do. That's handled behind the screens, handle it in the locker room, and handle it like that. But I think Ben will be okay. I do expect him to be back next year.
All right, so question for you. What's next for DC United down the line in terms of moves, in terms of what they're going to do?
No moves that they can make this year. They just need to kind of play these young kids, consider, you know, retooling the lineup and get better. And you want to kind of build for the momentum for the 2015 season, because potentially that's when you're going to open a new stadium for the team to play in.
All right, we're looking forward to that October 1st game, and we hope that DC United does well. I want to remind you that this is the Nation's Capital Sports Show. It can be heard on the award-winning Stitcher Radio Network at Stitcher Let's continue our conversation and talk about something in which I was waiting to talk about. And Vincent actually sent me the email to kickstart this off, and Chris provided the information. I did more research, and we're going to talk about the NCAA. And we're going to talk about this jersey fiasco that's going on. And so the NCAA will discontinue jersey sales through their online store effective immediately. Now let's talk a little bit about what kickstarted this. Chris.
Well, there's a number of things. This has been a really bad summer for the NCAA for legal things. Number one, they have a lawsuit that they're fighting in court. There's a player who used to play for UCLA. His name is Ed O'Bannon. He filed a lawsuit because the EA Sports game was using his likeness and all that. That's money that's going to NCAA. Ed's not getting any of that. Then you have the off-court issues with Johnny Manziel at Texas A&M, the Heisman Trophy winner, and it's gotten a lot of the people in the media talking, and Jay Billis kind of outed the NCAA for the hypocrisy of collecting money on these players and these players not getting any money, so they took it off.
So let me read a statement from the NCAA president, Mark Emmert, after that conference call, after he was outed, and he had a conference call with the national press. Quote, "In the national office, we certainly recognize why that could be seen as hypocritical indeed. The business of having the NCAA sell these kinds of goods is a mistake, and we're going to exit that business immediately." End quote. Vincent.
Okay, so they say, I question, they say they didn't make any money off of these jerseys. I really question that.
Was it going to a slush fund or something?
Who knows? We may find out later, but this is a can of worms, okay? This is just the beginning, and I think the NCAA has to really rethink how they're doing business, because I just see this thing growing bigger and bigger.
I'm going to call their bluff on that, the NCAA. They were making money off of this. They know where the money went. They were using it. They were spending it, and they're guilty as sin. Chris.
Yeah, it's kind of intellectually dishonest for them to say, well, we're not making any money. The NCAA, the schools may be making more money than the NCAA, but the NCAA definitely is making money off it. Or they wouldn't have had a contract with EA Sports, which they dropped it. If money wasn't involved, why did you feel the need to drop the contract with EA Sports?
Here's a bigger issue for another time and for another day. We had this discussion on our podcast, and we talked in terms of should NCAA football players or athletes be paid a stipend?
Well, it looks like it's a very, very slow-moving train, but it's picking up speed, and it looks like it could be going that way. That's another thing the NCAA has got to deal with, because, you know, with all these realignments that we've talked about before on the show, you now have basically 5 big conferences, and these big conferences are basically saber-rattling and letting folks know that they think these players in basketball and football should be getting some kind of payment. Not like $100,000 contracts, but they should be able to give them $1,000 or $2,000 a week or what have you. And they're making a movement and making sounds like if the NCAA isn't willing to hear it, they'll move on and separate from the NCAA.
I think it's important move in the right direction, because how many times have we all sat around this table and we heard stories in terms of the college athlete who parent has died or has to go home on an emergency but doesn't have any money to get there. You know, do you go to the boosters, which is illegal? But let's be realistic about this. We know that's happening. Vincent.
Yeah, some of these rules are just outrageous. The NCAA, you know, like those situations that you described, Kevin, where, you know, a person just needs some basic help. But I think there is definitely a movement towards the players getting compensated, and I believe they should be compensated. And the NCAA has made this a business with all the big television money, and it's only human nature that these players, they are the product. They're the ones that are making it possible for so many other people but themselves to make money, especially from the TV. So I see this snowball getting bigger, and eventually a stipend and
perhaps this could actually stop players from selling their own merchandise and signing jerseys on the side, you know, for you know, profit.
Well, it could be. And you know, the thing is, I know there's somebody out there, one of you, who are looking right now and saying they're getting enough already. They're getting a free scholarship and they're getting room and board and all that kind of stuff. Well, these kids are making millions of dollars for this. And unlike anybody else who's on a music scholarship or whatever, in the NCAA, players cannot work a part-time job. They can't make any money outside of their scholarship. So yes, they deserve some money, and if they're going to make it where you get billions of dollars, then the kids should get something for doing that.
All right, Chris, we're going to let you have the last one on that. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Vincent. We're going to take a break, but when we return, we're going to talk more sports here on the Nation's Capital Sports Show, where it's most definitely on Facebook. Catch us on Facebook at the Nation's Capital Sports Show at facebook.com. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Nation's Capital Sports Show, where it's most definitely on Comcast 69 and Files 38. I'm Kevin Jr., hanging out with my bosom buddies, Chris Jerry, Vincent Charles. Let's continue our conversation, talking about what we enjoy talking about the best and the most, and that is sports. Our beloved Washington Nationals, for all intents and purposes, mathematically or any other way, they're out of it. I mean, they're going to need some help from their friends to get that wild card spot. And Atlanta is at 72 games in terms of wins, and Nationals are at 57. They're not going to make that. You know, I mean, stranger things have happened, but we'll see how things progress. Let's talk about what ails the Washington Nationals. I made some observations this year from watching the Nationals, and I made a few of them. And one of them, of course, is Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper against left-hand batters, let's be honest, he stinks. He needs to improve upon that. Ryan Zimmerman needs to find his rhythm. Whether or not he needs to move closer or back, that's something that he needs to work on, perhaps during the offseason. And Steven Strasburg, although he had a good game yesterday, his first career complete game, he needs to do a better job stepping off base, throwing it to the first base or second base, wherever there's a runner at. He did do that yesterday. And so now let's continue our discussion on what ails the Washington Nationals. Those are just some of my talking points.
Well, I think, a little bit of everything. The one thing that the Nationals haven't had, even though they're on a 3-game winning streak, having swept the Phillies, they've not had a long streak where they won like 8 of 10 or, 12 of 18. They've not had a long streak. It's been, I think, 3, maybe 3 is the longest streak they've had, maybe 4, but they haven't had a long streak. I just think, Kevin, it's just a number of things. Some of it is injuries. Some of it is guys just getting slow starts, not hitting, a number of things. They seem to really have dropped off, though, when Bryce Harper went out on the disabled list early in the season, and they seem to have never recovered from that, really. Nor has he, really.
Vincent.
I think the number one thing has been inconsistency at the plate, like Kevin was describing there. A guy will have a good couple of weeks, but then he'll drop off. When you see guys like LaRoche hitting in the, 230?
230s.
When he had 33 home runs last year and over 100 RBIs. And I can go on down the lineup. But that has been the major problem. And they have not been able to get a lead early on to maybe inspire confidence in some of the starting pitching. The starters have done well. The relievers, they haven't been able to hold leads. The relievers have not been able to do as well as they should have. Also, the bench has been a big problem. You got guys hitting 167. You got guys like Chad Tracy and Bernardina and even Lombardozzi. Those guys have not been able to do it in the clutch, and those have been some of the major problems.
All right, so question for you guys. Are the Nationals as talented as they were last year? Because in my humble opinion, I think that as much as they like to call themselves talented for this year, I think that they're lacking several things. Chris, we'll start with you.
Well, I think we'll find out more next year whether they were as talented. Which one is the fluke year? Was it this year or was it last year? I think we'll find that out. One thing that I think will help that is when there's a new manager next year.
All right, so for all intents and purposes, for those of you who are watching us or listening to us, if we feel like we're writing off the Nationals for this season, we are.
Yes, we are. It definitely looks bleak. Even for the wild card, it looks bleak. And I agree with you there, Chris. Will the real Nats team stand up? And we're going to find that out next year.
Well, in our pre-production meeting, we all wrote them off. So I'm going to take a moment to paint the other side of the picture, because one needs to look no further than what happened with the Los Angeles Dodgers, who at one point was 13 games under 500 this year, and there was talk about firing Don Mattingly. They now stand 17 games over 500, the runaway leaders out west. The Nationals have 45 games left. They need to get to about 88 or 90 games. That sounds like a clip of about 30 and 15. Can they do it? Based on the form this year, they haven't, but they do have a puncher's chance maybe to pull it off because they play so many teams in the National League East, the Mets and the Marlins, that are not any good, and Phillies, that they could possibly get there, but I don't think it's likely.
Vincent.
They have a chance, but it's kind of late. It's going to be hard even getting to 80 to 82 games unless, like you were talking about prior, they start putting together some streaks. And we're talking streaks 7, 8 games or more.
Right.
That's right. Well, so far, based on where they're at now and how they're playing, I don't see that happening. But anything is possible. Anything is possible. Let's talk a little bit about Mike Rizzo. He was elevated and promoted by the Learners to president of the Nationals. It's going to be interesting to see what he does next year. And let's talk a little bit about Davey Johnson. In my humble opinion, I don't think Davey's going to be here next year. This is the time where you start looking at certain prospects, or at least entertaining that. Anyone that you have on your short list or long list, Chris?
I really don't. I don't know who it would be. I mean, you know, Davey had already announced before the year that he was not coming back, though there was whispers that if the Learners had offered him to come back, he would do it. I don't know, Kevin. One thing, that whoever the next manager is, I want to see that manager play small ball. That means I want to see a lot of steal attempts. I want to see them to try to hit and run more. Because Davey just sat back playing for big innings, and I think that's been a big problem for them this year too. While they, you know, it was like 50 games this year they've scored 2 runs or fewer, and in 31 games they've scored 1 run or fewer. That's ridiculous, and you need to play small ball to try to create offense.
And that's what I alluded to when we first started this segment, going back to basics. Vincent.
Definitely the Nationals were lacking in the small ball characteristics of the team. Getting back to Johnson and the manager situation, I don't completely rule out Johnson. I think there's a tiny bit of a chance if they finish strong, Johnson can say, oh, I changed my mind. But I'm going to throw out a name to you guys, and it may be a surprise. Ray Knight.
All right, so we're going to let you ponder that thought. And I don't know about Ray Knight. I'm going to throw out something to you. Davey Johnson is going at the end of the season. Mark my word on that. All right. So this is the Nation's Capital Sports Show. We want you to drop us a line at tncsportshow@gmail.com. Vincent didn't even like that one, but what are you going to do? Let's talk a little bit about biogenesis. Chris is making that face there, and Vincent's taking a sip of his Arlington County nice libation there of water. So let's talk about 13 players suspended, and of course they took their suspensions. Everyone except A-Rod, Alex Rodriguez of the Yankees, and 211 games. Wow, that's completely unfair. Let's kick the ballistics on this and talk about this, Chris.
Well, 13 guys got suspended. 12 of those guys took it like a man or took it like a fool. The one guy, and I'll tell you why I say that, because the one guy that didn't take his was Alex Rodriguez. You know, they suspended him for 211 games. My issue with this, and I'm a union guy. I mean, not only do I support the baseball union, I am in a union. My problem with this whole thing is they gave these guys a suspension without a positive test. Now, this isn't the federal government. Baseball says they've got all this evidence. Nobody's under perjury laws or anything that gave them this information. Anybody can lie their way out of it and create a paper trail. I had an issue with the fact that these 12 players, you know, all happen to be Latino, by the way. All of those guys got 50-game suspensions and did not have a positive test, and I don't agree with that.
Vincent.
You're right, Chris. And there's got to be evidence, and it's not there.
Yeah, I mean, well, and as Lance Armstrong has showed us, you know, now I'm not saying that there's not cheating going on, because I do believe there's still a lot of that in baseball, but I still say at the end of the day, you need to have a positive test in order to have suspensions like that. And especially in the case of A-Rod, Kevin, because 211 games is longer than anybody. The rules are stated in the CBA. First offense, 50. Second offense, 100. How do you get to 211?
This could the decision on Rodriguez could set a precedent as to how things are going to be handled. And I agree with both of you guys, is that it's almost like a kangaroo court here. It's almost like, well, these guys are going to give up their rights in terms of the union, and then they're going to take this quasi type of sentence that's going to be handed down to them. I think Rodriguez is doing the right thing. Whether or not you don't like Rodriguez or dislike him or like him as a player, that has nothing to do with it, Chris.
Well, I agree. Like I said, I think A-Rod should just fight it. Now, I think what's probably going to happen is there'll be some kind of compromise down the road. I don't know if an arbitrator will throw out that say he can't be suspended at all. But again, I think 211 games for no positive tests. No, I think I'm all for A-Rod fighting it. And A-Rod had something else that those other guys didn't have. A $252 million contract that gave him money, and he still got about $80 million left on it.
Which leads us to the next thing in terms of the Yankees. I mean, this obviously seems to me to be a ploy not to pay him. I don't know if Bud Selig, the commissioner of Major League Baseball, who, for all intents and purposes, works for the owners, of baseball. So therefore, you're going to get this one decision that's going to go down, and it's not going to look favorable on the players. But my point is, Vincent, in terms of in terms of the way this thing is going with Bud Selig, has he done a good job in terms of handling this situation?
Well, I think he didn't do a good job in that he took so much time to start handing down these suspensions. But the point about the Yankees, that is a good point, Kevin. I mean, they very well may be trying to get out of this contract with Rodriguez.
Yeah, that's a kind of a bad way of doing business, Chris.
Well, the Yankees say that, no, this is not the case, but I think most folks feel like they are trying to get from under that contract, and if they could get him suspended out of the game, that would work. If the Yankees feel so strong about this, and if they agree with Bud Selig, they can do something to Bud. They can simply say, A-Rod, go away. We'll pay you, just go away. But they didn't take that tack, did they? They said, no, come on back. You can play.
That's right. And so far for the Yankees, he's having, it's middling at best. He's been okay.
So-so. Got his first home run yesterday.
Yeah, but we talk about Bud Selig, the commissioner of Major League Baseball, whose track record in terms of performance-enhancing drugs hasn't been all that sparkling, to say the least. And so we're going to end it on that note. But before we get out of here, Vincent, we're going to talk about the individuals here at AIM, our beloved crew, who make us sound and look good. And they are.
And these are the people here on the staff at AIM. Devin Gallagher, Kevin Sampson, Sally Gelastino, Jannar Stewart, Steve Cordell, Kimberly Phillip, LJ Lacoma, Craig Syfax, Misty Sweet, and Jacqueline Perez.
All right, so we're going to have a happy birthday to Jannar Stewart. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Jannar.
Happy birthday, Jannar.
And on behalf of the entire AIM crew here, where you can watch us on the award-winning Arlington Independent Media, Comcast 69, Files 38. I'm Kevin Jeter. On behalf of Vincent Charles and Chris Jerry, we thank you for listening to this or watching this edition of the Nation's Capital Sports Show, where it's most definitely on. Go out and have yourself a great sporting week and a great sporting day. Until we see you again, take care.